In the dim light of dawn on April 12, 1945, in a makeshift compound on the outskirts of Baguio in the northern Philippines, 24 Japanese women knelt in the cold mud, their hands clasped tightly in silent prayer. The air hung heavy with the scent of recent rain and distant smoke from artillery fires that echoed faintly through the mist-shrouded mountains. Their tattered uniforms clung to emaciated frames, and the chill seeped through their thin shoes, a stark reminder of weeks spent hiding in caves and abandoned warehouses. They awaited the inevitable, the sharp crack of rifles, or the brutal advance of soldiers they had been taught to fear as demons. This moment, frozen in the gray half-light, marked the culmination of a desperate fight amid the crumbling Japanese defenses in Luzon, where American forces had relentlessly pushed inland since their landing at Leyte 6 months earlier. The Philippines had become a crucible of the Pacific War, a theater where imperial ambitions clashed with the inexorable tide of Allied reconquest. Japan had seized the archipelago in early 1942 following the devastating attack on Pearl Harbor and the subsequent invasion that forced General Douglas MacArthur to evacuate with his famous vow, "I shall return." By October 1944, MacArthur fulfilled that promise, leading a massive amphibious assault that reclaimed Leyte and ignited a grueling campaign across the islands. Baguio, nestled in the Cordillera Mountains, served as a key Japanese stronghold, home to General Tomoyuki Yamashita's headquarters and a network of supply lines. As American troops from the 33rd and 37th Infantry Divisions advanced in March 1945, Japanese forces fragmented. Most retreated into guerrilla warfare, but these women nurses, communications officers, clerks, and administrative staff attached to the 14th Area Army were isolated. Historical records from declassified U.S. Army reports detail their capture on April 1, when a patrol from the 129th Infantry Regiment stumbled upon them in a collapsed warehouse. Private First Class Robert Chen, a Nisei interpreter, noted in his post-war oral history, "They huddled like shadows, eyes wide with terror, expecting no quarter." Indoctrinated by the Imperial Japanese Army's Senjin-kun Code, which decreed, "Do not live to experience the shame as a prisoner." These women had been prepared for death over dishonor. Propaganda films and radio broadcasts painted Americans as savage barbarians, perpetrators of unspeakable atrocities against captives, especially women. Accounts from Japanese military training manuals warned of rape, mutilation, and summary executions, drawing on exaggerated tales from the China Front and the Bataan Death March to instill unyielding resolve. Sergeant Michiko Tanaka, a 31-year-old surgical nurse from Manchuria, confided in her fragmented diary entry dated March 28, "We have no food, no medicine. The fever burns through us. Each night, American patrols draw near. Tomorrow, it ends." They anticipated a fate worse than death torture designed to break the spirit before extinguishing the body. Yet, as the first rays pierced the clouds that April morning, no bayonets gleamed in the light. Instead, the compound gate creaked open, and the sound of clattering tin trays shattered the silence. What unfolded defied every expectation forged in the fires of wartime ideology. Captain William Morrison, a 34-year-old officer from Portland who had fought through the jungles of Leyte, conducted a routine inspection of the temporary detention site. U.S. policy, guided by the Geneva Convention of 1929, which Japan had not ratified but America, upheld mandated humane treatment of prisoners, including provisions for food, shelter, and medical care. The women had been given space in tents, minimal rations of rice porridge twice daily, occasionally supplemented with dried fish from local sources. But they refused much of it, convinced it was laced with poison, a ploy to weaken them for interrogation or worse. Nurse Fumiko Sato, aged 26, later recounted through an interpreter, "We believed they toyed with us, like predators savoring prey. Death would come, but only after humiliation." Morrison, witnessing their skeletal forms and haunted eyes, overrode protocol. As documented in 33rd Division logs, he ordered supplies from the nearby supply depot: fresh bread baked in field ovens, canned corned beef, fruit cocktail from sea creations, chocolate bars, and steaming pots of hot tea brewed from captured Japanese stores augmented with American provisions. The aroma of the hot tea wafted first rich earthy notes, cutting through the damp air, a scent that evokes distant memories of home yet carried the weight of the unknown. One by one, the women lifted their heads, speechless, their prayers interrupted not by violence but by this unexpected offering. Corporal James Rodriguez, in a letter to his sister preserved in the U.S. National Archives, described the scene. "They stared at the trays like ghosts seeing the living. Tears came, silent at first, then in waves. It was as if the world had inverted. The hot tea, poured into simple tin cups, became the focal point." Lieutenant Yoshiko Nakamura, The group's ranking officer at 29 approached tentatively, her hands trembling as she accepted a cup. The steam rose like a veil, symbolizing an abundance they had long forgotten amid wartime scarcity. A gesture of plenty from a nation whose democratic ideals extended even to enemies, where resources flowed not from coercion but from a system built on shared prosperity and human dignity. Factual records from the International Red Cross inspections of Pacific POW facilities confirm that American camps provided an average of 2,800 calories daily to Japanese prisoners, matching U.S. troop rations, in stark contrast to the 1,500 calories or less in Japanese-held camps where Allied POWs suffered 40% mortality rates. By April 1945, over 5,000 Japanese had been captured in the Philippines alone, a number swelling as propaganda's grip weakened. These women, among the first female captives processed, received medical attention, sulfa drugs for pneumonia, clean bandages for wounds. Over the following days, the hot tea recurred, a morning ritual offered without demand, its warmth seeping into chilled bones, representing not just sustenance but the democratic ethos of equality under law, where even the vanquished warranted care. Private Yuki Harada, the youngest at 19, clutched her cup like a talisman, later reflecting in a 1982 interview, "It was real, not a dream. Why would enemies offer such comfort?" This contrast pierced the veil of indoctrination. They had braced for chains and brutality, envisioning scenes from propaganda reels where American soldiers desecrated bodies and showed no mercy. Instead, guards shared cigarettes, taught simple card games, and displayed family photos, humanizing the other. Declassified interrogations reveal initial disbelief. One woman whispered to another, as noted by interpreter Chen, "This must be a trick, kindness before the kill." But as days passed, the hot tea's recurrence eroded doubt. It symbolized American abundance, drawn from vast agricultural heartlands and industrial might, fueled by a democracy that valued individual worth over imperial hierarchy. Sergeant Tanaka's diary evolved. Entries shifted from despair to wonder, noting on April 15th, "The tea steams hot each morning. No poison. Only warmth. What world is this?" The transformation unfolded gradually, reshaping perceptions forged in the crucible of total war. Lieutenant Nakamura, trained in Tokyo's military academies, where Bushido demanded unyielding loyalty, grappled with cognitive dissonance. Post-war testimonies compiled by historian Thomas Nakamura in 1982 highlight her internal shift. "We were taught honor lay in death, yet these Americans honored us in life." The event challenged the ideology of divine imperial rule, exposing its fragility against acts of compassion. By late April, as U.S. forces consolidated control over Luzon, capturing Yamashita's remnants in June, the women engaged more openly. They assisted in treating their own sick, consulting American medics, their ideology fracturing under the weight of evidence. The hot tea, offered freely without reciprocity, embodied democracy's core, a system where abundance stemmed from freedom, not subjugation, allowing even captors to extend mercy. Data from U.S. War Department reports underscore the broader impact. Japanese surrender rates increased tenfold in the Philippines from 1944 to 1945, partly due to circulated stories of humane treatment, countering propaganda that claimed 100% of captives were executed. Among these women, the change was profound. Nurse Sato, recovering from dysentery, began viewing her captors not as monsters, but as mirrors of humanity. "The tea's steam rose like hope," she later said, melting the ice of fear. This symbolic cup recurred in their routine's morning distributions, afternoon shares during rainstorms, each instance reinforcing the abundance of a nation where farms spanned continents and factories produced endlessly, all underpinned by democratic principles that rejected the zero-sum cruelty of empire. As May dawned, with Germany's surrender on the 8th rippling through Allied communications, the compound's atmosphere softened. The women taught Japanese phrases. Americans reciprocated with English lessons. During a downpour on May 10, Private Harada shared her hot tea under a tarp with guards, the steam mingling with rain, a quiet emblem of bridged divides. Captain Morrison, in his after-action report, noted, "Humanity prevailed where doctrine failed." By month's end, orders came for transfer to a larger facility in Manila, housing over 1,000 Japanese POWs. The night before departure, the women bowed in gratitude, their perceptions irrevocably altered. The hot tea, that recurring symbol of unexpected plenty, had dismantled walls of ideology, revealing the shared frailty beneath uniforms. In the epilogue of this quiet drama, as the women boarded transports for repatriation in November 1945, docking at Araga Harbor amid Japan's ruins, the lessons endured. 15 reunited in Tokyo in 1947, toasting with simple cups, echoes of that symbolic tea. Sergeant Tanaka worked in a clinic, sharing tales that seeded post-war reconciliation. The event illuminates a larger truth. In the shadow of conflict, freedom's abundance manifests not in conquest but in compassion, where democracy's warmth thaws the coldest ideologies, proving that humanity's truest victory lies in recognizing the enemy as kin, bound by the same fragile hopes under an unyielding sky. This act, amid the war's vast tally over 100,000 Japanese dead in the Philippines alone, stands as a poetic testament to ideology's fallibility, where a simple cup of hot tea, offered in abundance, redeems the promise of a world rebuilt on empathy rather than enmity.